Have you ever been betrayed so deeply, it felt like your whole world collapsed? Have you cried out to God? Why did you let this happen? Only to be met with silence. But what if the very pain you're trying to escape is part of God's plan to shape you? When pain becomes the doorway to growth, there are moments in life when betrayal crushes your spirit. The ones you trusted walk away. The words they speak slice through your heart. Their silence hurts more than their presence ever did. You sit in that brokenness, overwhelmed, questioning everything you once believed. You cry out to God. Why? Why did you let them hurt me like this? Why didn't you stop it? But what if I told you God allowed it not to destroy you, but to develop you? What if the very thing that felt like it would break you was actually part of His plan to build you into someone stronger, wiser, more grounded? Some of you are walking through a season of deep pain, wrestling with the question, why would God bring those people into my life just to let them hurt me? But hear this truth. God is not punishing you, He's positioning you. Every tear you've cried, every heartbreak you've endured, every knife in the back, none of it caught God off guard. He saw it, He allowed it, and He will use it for His glory. You see, God's ways are higher than ours. Where we see pain, He sees purpose. Where we feel loss, He sees transformation. We just want out of the suffering, but God knows that through it we are becoming who we were meant to be. The enemy thought he was taking you out. He thought the betrayal, the abandonment, the heartbreak would finish you, but all he did was push you closer to your calling. So don't give up. Don't let the pain harden your heart. Let it drive you deeper, deeper into God's presence, deeper into your purpose. Because one day you'll look back and say with clarity and strength, it had to happen. If they hadn't hurt me, I wouldn't have become who I am today. You didn't see it coming. You trusted them. You loved them. You believed they were for you. And then they turned on you. They left when you needed them most. They said things that wounded you deeply. They did things that left scars no one else could see. And there you were shattered, asking why a good and loving God would ever let this happen. But listen closely. God saw it long before you did. He knew they would betray you. He knew they would walk away. And still He allowed it. Not because He enjoys your pain, but because His purpose is bigger than your pain. Sometimes God has to let others break your heart so that He can step in and be the one to heal it. Sometimes He lets people abandon you so you finally learn that He will never leave you nor forsake you. Look at Jesus. One of His own, someone He walked with, ate with, and poured love into, sold Him for 30 pieces of silver. Peter, one of His closest friends, denied, even knowing Him. And when He carried the cross beaten and bruised, the very people He came to save stood there mocking Him. What if the very betrayal that broke your heart was the very thing that positioned you for your purpose? We just saw how Jesus, the Son of God Himself, endured betrayal, denial, and rejection. Not because He deserved it, but because it was part of His divine assignment. If He had to suffer to fulfill His destiny, why do we think we'll escape the same process? Every rejection, every betrayal, every painful moment wasn't random. It was redemptive. The people who hurt you, they were necessary. If they hadn't turned their backs on you, you would have stayed comfortable. If they hadn't walked away, you wouldn't have learned to cling to God. If they hadn't rejected you, you might still believe your worth came from people instead of from Him. So stop staring at who left. Stop crying over the ones who betrayed you. Stop questioning why they didn't love you the way you loved them. Instead, lift your head and thank God, because if they were meant to stay, they would have stayed. If they were part of your destiny, they wouldn't have been removed. They served their purpose, and now their season is over. Don't let their betrayal define you. Let it refine you. Don't let their rejection make you bitter. Let it make you better. Because one day you'll see the whole picture. One day it will all make sense. You won't be weeping over what you lost. You'll be praising God for what He was preparing. Some of you are still clinging to the pain, still replaying the moment, still wondering, why would they do that to me? But have you ever considered that if they hadn't hurt you, you'd still be stuck in a place you were never meant to stay? If they hadn't walked away, you never would have moved forward. God had to let it happen, because without the pain, you never would have stepped into purpose. Look at Moses. He was raised in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by wealth, safety, and comfort. But one moment of righteous anger sent him fleeing into the wilderness. That rejection, being cast out of Egypt, must have felt like failure, like his destiny had ended before it even began. But what Moses couldn't see was that leaving Egypt wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It wasn't his downfall. It was his divine call. Because in the wilderness, God would meet him. In the wilderness, God would shape him. And in the wilderness, God would call him not as a prince of Egypt, but as a deliverer of his people. The wilderness isn't your end. It might just be the very place where God begins to call you into your true purpose. But for that to happen, sometimes God has to push you out of where you've been. Some of you are still crying over the people who left you, over the situations that forced you to leave. But what if those very moments weren't setbacks? They were divine setups to move you into your next assignment. What if God saw that as long as you remained comfortable, you would never step into what He truly created you for? Take a moment to think about Joseph. If his brothers hadn't sold him, he never would have ended up in Egypt. If Potiphar's wife hadn't falsely accused him, he never would have gone to prison. And if he hadn't gone to prison, he never would have met the cupbearer, the very man who would later introduce him to Pharaoh. Every betrayal, every injustice, every painful detour, it was all part of the path to his destiny. Some people had to reject you so you would run back to God. Some relationships had to fall apart so you could walk forward into purpose. Some places had to get uncomfortable so you would finally move. So stop trying to return to what God has already rescued you from. Stop holding on to people God has already removed. Stop resisting the very thing that's pushing you toward your calling. You might not understand it now, but one day you'll look back and say, if they hadn't hurt me, I wouldn't be here. If they hadn't betrayed me, I wouldn't have prayed like I did. If they hadn't left me, I wouldn't have discovered who I truly am in Christ. God didn't allow it to destroy you. He allowed it to direct you. The pain wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something greater. So let go. Step forward. Your destiny is waiting. Now here's the part most people miss. You're praying for blessings. You're asking for favor. But do you know what often comes with it? Opposition, resistance. People rising up against you. And then you ask God, why is this happening? Why does it feel like I'm under attack from every side? But hear this clearly today. Your enemies are not in control. They are not the authors of your downfall. In fact, they might just be part of God's strategy to take you higher. Some of you are facing unfair battles right now. People are talking about you plotting against you. Doors are closing. Resistance is mounting. It feels like you're under spiritual siege. But could it be that God is using these very attacks as the elevator to your next level? Could it be that your enemies weren't sent to destroy you, but to promote you? And if that's true, then even your opposition is working in your favor. The ones trying to tear you down might be the very ones God is using to lift you up. Joseph's story is a perfect example. His own brothers hated him. They mocked him. They stripped him of his robe, threw him in a pit, and sold him into slavery. To them, they were getting rid of the dreamer. They thought they were ending his future. But what they didn't know was that they were actually sending him straight into the hands of his destiny. The very ones who tried to ruin Joseph were unknowingly positioning him for promotion. And this pattern isn't limited to Joseph. Jesus, the Son of God, faced enemies at every turn. The religious leaders constantly tried to trap him. Judas, one of his own disciples, sold him out for 30 pieces of silver. Pilate, pressured by the crowd, sentenced him. And that crowd, the same people who once shouted Hosanna, now screamed, "Crucify him!" But here's the paradox. Had there been no cross, there would have been no resurrection. Had there been no betrayal, no pain, no suffering, there would have been no salvation. The very people who thought they were ending Jesus' story were actually completing God's greatest plan for humanity. So why do we fear our enemies? Why do we panic when people oppose us? Why do we try to fight spiritual battles in our own strength? Instead of falling into despair, start lifting up praise. Because if opposition is rising, it's not a sign that you're falling, it's a sign that you're climbing. If there's a Goliath in front of you, it means there's a kingdom waiting for you. If there's a Judas in your circle, it means there's a resurrection on the horizon. Your enemies are not your downfall, they are your divine setup. Let them talk, let them plan, let them walk away. Because when God is for you, who can be against you? The very ones who thought they were burying you are actually being used by God to plant you, and what they thought would end you is going to launch you. So fix your eyes on Him. Don't get distracted by the voices around you. Your elevation is on the way. Even Jesus, flawless, holy, perfect, wasn't spared from betrayal. He wasn't protected from pain. He was falsely accused, beaten, and crucified. Not because he failed, but because it was essential for the fulfillment of the Father's will. And if he, the Savior of the world, had to walk through that pain to fulfill his purpose, why do we think we'll be spared from the same? Think about Judas. He walked with Jesus. He witnessed miracles. He heard the teachings, he ate at the same table. But still, for 30 pieces of silver, he handed over the Messiah. Judas wasn't just a betrayer, he was part of God's divine plan. And what Judas didn't realize was this: his betrayal wasn't destroying Jesus, it was setting up the greatest victory in history. The cross looked like the end, but in truth it was only the beginning. What the enemy meant for evil, God used for good and turned it into salvation for all who believe. Some of you right now are asking the same question. Why would God allow someone so close to me to hurt me? Why did someone I trusted turn against me? But here's the truth. If Jesus needed a Judas to get to the cross, then maybe, just maybe, you need a Judas to get to your purpose. That betrayal, it wasn't random, it was divine. The Pharisees thought they had won when they brought false charges. The Roman soldiers thought they had the final word when they nailed him to that cross. The crowd thought they had silenced him when they mocked him in his suffering. But then 3 days later, the stone was rolled away. The tomb was empty, and Jesus, risen in glory, stepped out with all power in his hands. What they thought was defeat was actually the greatest victory. And the same is true for you. Yes, they lied about you. Yes, they hurt you. Yes, they left scars that no one else sees. But listen closely. God is turning every attack into fresh anointing. They may have pushed you down, but God is getting ready to raise you up. They thought they were burying you, but what they didn't realize is that a seed must first be buried before it can grow into something greater. So don't despise the betrayals. Don't let the false accusations shake you. Don't give up just because people walked away. If they did it to Jesus, they'll do it to you. But just like Jesus, you will rise again. And when you do, those same people who thought they had buried, you will be witnesses to the fulfillment of God's purpose in your life. The cross was not the end. It was the pathway to glory. And your pain, your suffering, your betrayal, it's not the end of your story either. It's the setup for something far greater. Some doors only open after pain. Some blessings only come through wounds. Let's be honest, no one enjoys suffering. No one wakes up hoping for betrayal or heartbreak. When the pain comes, we pray, God, take it away, make it stop. But what if I told you that some of the doors God has for your life can only be unlocked through the pain you've walked through? It sounds counterintuitive, but have you ever considered this? What if your greatest blessings are waiting on the other side of your deepest pain? Some of you are still carrying wounds from people who betrayed you, from seasons that nearly broke you. You keep asking God why. Why did you let this happen to me? But what if that very wound is the key that unlocks the next level of your calling? What if the pain you've gone through is actually the doorway to the very purpose God created you for? Jesus was nailed to the cross, his body broken, his hands and feet pierced. But through those wounds, salvation came to the world. Thomas, one of his own disciples, didn't believe he had risen until he saw the scars. The proof of the resurrection was in the pain. It was the wounds that carried the evidence of victory. Your scars tell a story too. They are not marks of defeat. They are signs that you survived. That you were struck but not destroyed. That you were broken but not abandoned. There are doors God is preparing to open in your life. But first you have to walk through the fire. Just as gold is refined in the furnace, just as diamonds are formed under intense pressure, your pain is producing something far more valuable than you can see right now. You may not understand it in this moment, but one day when you look back, you'll see the suffering wasn't meant to break you. It was meant to build you. It was preparation, not punishment. The very thing that wounded you, God is going to use it to bless you. The thing that tried to break you, He will use it to strengthen and shape you. So don't despise your pain. Don't curse your scars. Because through them, God is about to open doors that no man can shut. Too many people believe that suffering means God is angry. That hardship equals punishment. That pain is the sign of divine disappointment. But hear me, your pain is not God's punishment. It is His preparation. What you're walking through right now isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to position you for something greater. Take Job, for example. He was a righteous man. He loved God. He walked in integrity. And yet he lost everything. His wealth, his health, even his children. His friends insisted he must have sinned, that God was punishing him. But they were wrong. God wasn't punishing Job. He was preparing him for a greater revelation of His power, His sovereignty, and His faithfulness. And in the end, Job received double for everything he lost. Some of you are in that very place right now, a season of deep pain, and the enemy is whispering in your ear, God has left you. This is your fault. You're being punished. Your pain isn't proof that God has left you. It's confirmation that He's still working, still preparing you for what's ahead. So hear me clearly. If God were finished with you, He wouldn't be preparing you. The very fact that you're going through hardship is evidence that God still has plans for your life. He's strengthening you. He's shaping you. He's teaching you to trust Him like never before. Even Jesus, the Son of God, went through suffering. Not because He was being punished, but because He was being prepared. Before His public ministry began, He was led into the wilderness to be tested. Before His greatest victory on the cross, He had to endure the deepest pain. So if suffering was part of Jesus' journey, why do we think we'll be exempt? Your pain is not pointless. God is using it to make you stronger, to develop your endurance, to prepare you for the assignment that's coming next. And when you come out on the other side, you'll look back and realize what felt like suffering was really God shaping you for the destiny He had already planned. So hold on, don't quit. This isn't the end of your story. It's the preparation for your next chapter. When we're in pain, it often feels meaningless. The betrayal, the rejection, the heartbreak. We wonder what good could possibly come out of this. But let me remind you, God does not waste suffering. He takes what was meant to break you and turns it into the very thing that will empower you. Look at Peter. He denied Jesus 3 times. He wept bitterly, ashamed, broken, convinced that he had failed for good. But did God abandon him? No. After the resurrection, Jesus restored Peter and used him to preach the first great revival where thousands came to faith. Peter's failure became the foundation of his greatest calling. And then there's Paul. He struggled with a thorn in the flesh, a constant burden. He begged God to take it away. But God replied, My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. God didn't remove the suffering. He transformed it. He took Paul's pain and turned it into power, and raised him up as one of the most influential apostles the world has ever known. And then there's Jesus. The cross was suffering. The cross, a place of suffering and shame, became the stage for God's greatest glory. The nails, the crown of thorns, the mockery. Every part of it was designed to bring humiliation and destruction. But God didn't waste that suffering. He transformed it. What was meant to be a symbol of defeat became the greatest symbol of victory the world has ever known. And some of you've walked through things that almost destroyed you. You've been betrayed by people you trusted with your heart. You've been wounded by words you can't forget. You've faced devastating loss, painful rejection, heartbreak you never saw coming. But hear me, none of it was wasted. God is taking your suffering and turning it into your testimony. That wound you thought would never heal. That moment you thought broke you beyond repair. God will use that very place of pain to reveal His greatest power. He'll take what tried to crush you and use it to raise up others through your story. So don't let the pain make you bitter. Let it make you bolder. Don't let the suffering define who you are. Let God refine who you are becoming. Because when He's finished, you'll look back and realize every tear, every battle, every moment of struggle was moving you closer to a place of greater power, greater purpose, greater victory. God never wastes suffering. He transforms it into glory. You asked God to use you. You prayed, Lord, take me deeper, lift me higher, fulfill your will in my life. But then people started leaving. Friends turned cold. Relationships fell apart. People you thought would always be there were suddenly gone. And you cried out, God, why? But listen carefully. When God is getting ready to take you to the next level, He starts removing people who can't go with you. Some people were only meant to walk with you for a season. Some relationships were holding you back more than you knew. Some connections weren't divine assignments. They were distractions dressed as loyalty. And in His wisdom, God began to clear the path, because He knew if they stayed, they'd keep you from the destiny He prepared for you. Look at Gideon. He started with an army of 32,000 men, ready to go into battle. But God said, you have too many. So the number was reduced again and again, until Gideon was left with only 300 soldiers. Why? Because if the victory came with thousands, the people would have taken the credit. But when the army was stripped down to almost nothing, it became undeniable. This victory belongs to the Lord. And maybe that's what God is doing in your life too. Stripping things back, so that when the breakthrough comes, there will be no doubt it was Him. When God removes something or someone from your life, it's not to leave you empty. It's to make room for something greater. Some of you are still grieving over who left. You're holding on to people that God has already removed. But what if their exit was never an accident? What if the very thing you're crying over was what God used to set you free? Think about Abraham. God told him to go to a land that He would show him. But Abraham made a mistake. He brought Lot with him. And as long as Lot was around, there was conflict, confusion, and constant tension. But the moment Lot left, God spoke. The moment Lot was out of the picture, the promise became clear. Some of you are still waiting to hear from God, but you're holding on to your lot. And as long as you keep clinging to what He already told you to release, clarity will feel out of reach. Even Jesus had thousands of followers, but only 12 disciples. And even among the 12, He had Peter, James, and John, His inner circle. When He went up the mountain to be transfigured, He didn't take all 12. He only took 3. Why? Because not everyone is meant to go with you to the next level. Stop chasing people. God has already removed. Stop trying to reopen doors that God Himself has shut. If they were meant to stay, they would have stayed. If they walked away, it's because their part in your story is finished. And that's okay, because when God removes, He also provides. When He takes something away, He's making room for something better. Let them go. Trust God's plan. The right people, the right opportunities, the right relationships, everything you need for the next season will be sent by Him. You don't have to chase it. You just have to be ready to receive it. There are seasons in life where it feels like you're completely alone. The phone stops ringing. People you depended on fade away. You look around and it seems like everyone else is moving forward, while you're stuck in a season of silence, waiting isolation. And you ask, God, why am I so alone? Why does it feel like no one sees me, no one understands? But hear this truth today. Your isolation is not abandonment, it's preparation. Look at David. Before he ever stood before Goliath, before he ever wore the crown, he was out in the fields alone with the sheep. No applause, no spotlight, but it was there in the quiet, in the unseen place, that he learned to fight the lion and the bear. It was there that he learned to trust God with everything. His private victories prepared him for public breakthrough. And look at Jesus. Before beginning his public ministry, the Spirit led him into the wilderness. 40 days of isolation, testing, and preparation. But when he came out of that season, he came out in power. Some of you are in that wilderness season right now, and the enemy is trying to convince you God's forgotten you. No one sees you. Your life has no purpose. But listen to me. God sees you. And this season, it's not a waste. It's necessary. He's removing the distractions. He's pulling you away from the noise you see. When God is calling you higher, He often starts by setting you apart. He'll pull you into a season where it's just you and Him. Because before He can use you publicly, He must first build you privately. Before He places you into your destiny, He must strengthen your character. Before He opens big doors, He wants to make sure you're ready to walk through them. So don't despise the quiet season. Don't rush the process. Your isolation is not punishment, it's preparation. And when God is finished, when He has refined you, strengthened you, and filled you with His power, you will walk into your destiny with a confidence that doesn't come from people. It comes from knowing that God Himself has prepared you for this moment. Stay faithful. Stay expectant. Because when this season ends, you won't even recognize who you've become. You'll be stronger, wiser, and fully equipped for the next level God has in store for you. Sometimes, the very people who tried to destroy you are the ones God will use to promote you. You don't have to fight for your place. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to seek revenge. God knows how to prepare a table for you in the presence of your enemies. He knows how to take what was meant for harm and turn it into a testimony that even your enemies will have to witness. Look at Joseph. His brothers hated him. They threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery. They thought they had buried him, but in reality they were pushing him closer to the palace. Years later, when famine swept the land, the same brothers who betrayed him came and bowed before him, not knowing that the one they cast aside now held the key to their survival. Look at Daniel. His enemies set a trap. They got him thrown into the lion's den. They thought it was over, but God shut the mouths of the lions. And the next morning, Daniel walked out untouched, while his enemies were thrown into the very trap they had prepared for him. And look at Jesus. The religious leaders plotted against him. Judas betrayed him. The crowd shouted, "Crucify him!" They thought they had won. They thought the cross was the end. But 3 days later, Jesus rose in power. What they meant for destruction, God used to complete the greatest plan in all of human history. And now the name of Jesus is exalted above every name. Yes, his enemies put him in the grave, but his resurrection announced his elevation. Some of you today are surrounded by people trying to bring you down. They're lying about you, plotting behind your back, hoping to see you fail. But hear this, they don't have the final say. The same people who counted you out will have to watch as God lifts you up. The same people who tried to bury you will witness your breakthrough. David once said, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." Psalm 235. That doesn't mean the absence of enemies. It means their presence is proof that God is preparing something great. Because the only way they can see your table is if God lets them stay and watch. So don't waste your energy fighting battles that belong to the Lord. Don't try to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Let them whisper. Let them plot. Let them think they've already won. Because soon God will raise you up. And when He does, even your enemies will have no choice but to recognize His hand on your life. So stay faithful. Stay focused. Your elevation is on the way. Now let's be real. There are wounds that cut so deep you question if you'll ever fully heal. There are betrayals that shatter your soul so badly it feels like you'll never recover. You've cried in silence. You've wept in the midnight hour asking God why He allowed so much pain. But hear this loud and clear. Your deepest pain is about to become your greatest testimony. That very thing that tried to destroy you is exactly what God will use to deliver you. Look at Paul. Before he was a great apostle, he was Saul, a violent persecutor of the early church. He hated Christians. He hunted them down. But on the road to Damascus, God knocked him down, blinded him, and completely transformed his life. And the man who once caused so much pain became the one who preached salvation across nations. His past could have disqualified him, but instead God used it to glorify His name. Now think of Hannah, barren, mocked, ridiculed. She wept bitterly. She poured out her soul before God. And in the middle of that anguish, God heard her cry and gave her Samuel, a prophet who would anoint kings. Her pain wasn't meaningless. It was part of the plan. And then there's Jesus, the nails in His hands, the crown of thorns, the wounds in His side, the agony of the cross. It was pain beyond what we can imagine. But out of that unimaginable suffering came the greatest victory the world has ever known. His scars became proof of the resurrection. His wounds became the testimony of our redemption. And now some of you reading this, you've been through things you never thought you'd survive. You've carried pain no one even knows about. But I need you to know, God sees you, and He will not let your pain be wasted. The very thing that hurt you the most is what He will use to heal someone else. That storm that almost broke you, it's the very thing that will give you the strength to stand up and boldly declare, "I'm still here by the grace of God." Your testimony is still being written even in your pain. What you thought was breaking you was actually building you. The suffering wasn't meaningless. It was laying the groundwork for the glory that is coming. So don't hide your scars. Don't be ashamed of your story. Because very soon the thing that wounded you most will become the very thing God uses to bring healing to someone else. Your greatest pain is about to become your greatest testimony. And when you stand and share your story, people won't see the wounds anymore. They'll see the glory of God written all over your life. My friend, everything you've walked through, every wound, every betrayal, every sleepless night, every silent tear, none of it has been wasted. You may not fully understand it now, but God has been working behind the scenes all along, using every trial to shape you, every tear to soften you, every moment to refine and prepare you for something far greater than you could ever imagine. The people who hurt you, they were part of the plan. The pain you endured, it was necessary for your growth. The doors that closed, they were never meant for you. What looked like rejection was actually divine protection. What felt like suffering was actually the foundation for your elevation. Joseph's betrayal led to his breakthrough. Job's suffering led to his double portion. David's rejection led to his reign. And Jesus' crucifixion, it led to his resurrection. You are not the exception. Your pain has a purpose. So today, I challenge you. Stop looking at your wounds as signs of failure. Start seeing them as evidence that God's hand is on your life. Stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start declaring, God is using this for my good. Because He is. And He will. One day, the very people who doubted you, I will see you walking in the blessings of God. The same ones who hurt you will witness God lifting you up. And when you finally stand in the place God prepared for you, you'll look back and say with tears in your eyes and strength in your voice, every bit of the pain was worth it. So stay strong, stay faithful, keep trusting, because your story is not over. And when God is finished, what was meant to break you will become the very thing that blesses you.